There are so many emotions that is going through me right now. Wow. Oh my God. We're not. This is gonna be a different episode of Victory Stop. We're not gonna do the usual intro and all that stuff. We're just gonna jump straight into welcome back to the episode of MDK Victory Stop. My name is Jett Krause. Holy cow! That was the craziest Talladega race I think I've ever seen in NASCAR. What? I'm in shock. I'm in disbelief right now. I mean, I don't know what to say at this point. I mean, holy crap. Okay, we're going to get into the rest of the race, but we're going to focus on what took place on the final overtime coming to the final lap. Matt DiBenedetto gets a good push from the 20 car of Eric Jones. And then entering turn 3, Buescher and William Byron gets a huge run. Jones goes up top, smacks the wall. DiBenedetto comes up top, comes down low, forces William Byron below the yellow line. Hamlin's way below the yellow line. Keselowski spins, and then we have a 3-wide battle for the lead. Byron in the middle, Hamlin down low, and DiBenedetto up top as they beat and bang towards the start finish line. You see Elliott go below the yellow line to pass Buescher, and at the line by 23 one-thousandths of a second, Denny Hamlin wins at Talladega for I think the first time in his career. Now, we're going to go over this because there was a lot of confusion, a lot of stuff went on during that final lap. So DiBenedetto and Elliott were penalized by NASCAR for that move. DiBenedetto forced Byron before the yellow line. Now this remains consistent because earlier in the race, Joe Logano forced Elliott below the yellow line. At the same turn, Logano got penalized. DiBenedetto also got penalized for forcing Byron below the yellow line. Elliott was penalized because he passed Buescher below the yellow line. But then we've got Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin is a it's such a fine line. It was such a tough call for NASCAR to make. Because of the contact with Eric Jones and Chris Buescher, both of them came down, and it looked like Hamlin was sort of forced down by the 17 car Chris Buescher, but he did take a while to come back up on the racetrack. And I think that's why NASCAR was taking so long in determining whether Hamlin move was legal or not, because of how slow he came back up on the racetrack. Usually when you go below the yellow line, you get right back up. But this time he took quite some time. And also looked like Buescher and Jones, they might have came down on Hamlin, but they still gave Hamlin a bit of room. It was such a tough call. Such a tough call. I mean, I would not want to be in NASCAR's shoes making that decision, but at the same time, this is just further proves that we need to get rid of the yellow line rule. If we got rid of the yellow line rule, we would not be having this discussion. We would not be having these arguments on whether Hamlin's move was legal or not. We would just be celebrating of what an incredible finish that was. And that was an incredible finish to what was a chaotic race at Talladega. I mean, the entire race as a whole was chaotic. Stage 1 was a bit calm. You had Logano and I think Hamlin, where they were the two drivers are making aggressive moves, so we knew that this was going to be a chaotic race. And let's be honest, you have Logano in the field, you know this is going to be a mad race, and it was. So stage 1, it was pretty calm. Stage 2, we saw the first big one. Lap 109, Jimmy Johnson getting aggressively pushed by Clint Bowyer entering the tri-oval. Bowyer just pushes too hard, turns Johnson, who turns into Kurt Busch, and a hellacious hit for Kurt Busch he took, goes up in the air on top of Cole Custer, gets back on all four, but collects numerous playoff drivers in the process. I mean, what Bowyer did was really stupid. I mean, he was pushing. I mean, he basically just flat out spun Jimmy Johnson. Johnson was pretty animated on a radio, saying, "Are you bleeping kidding me? Like, what was that?" And I don't blame him because Bowyer, he just turned Jimmy. He wanted to get off his bumper. After numerous times Johnson got loose, he was trying to straighten his car out. Bowyer would not stop pushing. This was before the end of stage 2. So that was just one of a many, let's just say goosebump type moves in this race. In my opinion, it was your typical Talladega race under this rules package. Very aggressive racing, aggressive bumping, aggressive blocking, 2 wide, 3 wide for 97% of the race. There were the only times where we saw the race go single file was when we saw the Penske drivers of Keselowski and Logano be out in front. They were able to dictate the race pace. But man, those 4 drivers, they are super strong, especially Logano and Keselowski. They were really, really strong. Also, the Hendrick drivers, they showed up today. Chase Elliott and William Byron. Alex Bowman, who was caught up in an accident, I think in stage 1, the first big accident of the race. He was able to finish or be there at the finish at a car that looked like it was ready for the dumpster. But it was around near the end of stage 2 when we started to see the yellow line rule become a huge factor. The yellow line rule I think that was the most amount of times I've seen the yellow line rule be brought up. I think 4 or 5 different incidents the yellow line rule was in play. The first time was back around near the end of stage 2. Joe Logano, who said he got loose, but in reality he just came down right in front of De Benedetto, pushed De Benedetto out of the line and way below the yellow line. Logano was penalized by NASCAR for forcing a driver below the yellow line. Then, in the first overtime, so it's late into the race, it's Logano and Elliott. Elliott gets a huge run on Joe Logano on the top lane, cuts down low, but gets 2 wheels below the yellow line. He was able to come back up, take the lead, and then a huge accident took place behind them right before they took the white flag involving Reddick, Kyle Busch, created a huge accident. Logano was black flagged again by NASCAR for forcing someone below the yellow line. And then the final time was, of course, coming to the finish line involving De Benedetto, William Byron, and Denny Hamlin, as well as Chase Elliott. I'm gonna give my thoughts on fully the overtime, the yellow line rule at the end of the episode, so make sure you guys tune in for that. But this race had everything. Even later on, near the end of the race, when we saw all those overtime finishes come into play, we saw fuel strategy become an issue now. You had, I think, after the second overtime, when the second overtime restart took place, Chase Elliott was the leader, just flipped up his reserve fuel. He was low on fuel. Then De Benedetto and Buescher, they were low on fuel when they took the lead on the final, or what would be the final overtime of that race. I mean, this race had carnage, it had chaos, it had aggressive bumping, aggressive blocking, it had fuel strategy, it had everything, and controversy on top of that. But for the people, there were some people that didn't get to see the finish at Talladega. After, I believe, the second overtime, either the first or second overtime caution or incident took place when the race was red flagged, NBC decided to cut away from the race to air nightly, not even nightly news, local news, which is so dumb. Because this is a big race. This is Talladega, one of the biggest races of the calendar. You have an intense battle coming near to the finish, and you're just going to cut away to local news. I really don't think anyone really cares about local news at this point. They can just get it on their phone. But there were even people of NBC affiliates that were even saying that 2 minutes ago, I think at 6:18, they said they're going to kill the local news for the race. 2 minutes later, okay, get back on the air. They're going to kill NASCAR for local news. So the remaining of the race, or the remaining 2 overtime finishes, had to take place on NBCSN, which I know affected a lot of people because not a lot of people have NBCSN, which sucks. And that's one thing I hate with NBC is that, first of all, number one, NBC. If you are worried about a race going over its original time slot and going into your local news, start the race earlier. Why don't they know this? They know Talladega, especially under this package, the races are going to go very long. So why not start the race at noon or at 1 instead of 2:30 in the afternoon? You know how long these races can be. So if NBC, if you don't want to get into the local news slot, just start the race earlier. That was the only thing that I hated with NBC, was that if a race is on NBC, depending on how long the race takes, they just switch over to their cable network. And especially at a race like Talladega, that was just a very dumb move on NBC's part, I felt like. But yeah, here's a look at the unofficial results. I'm going to be reading off my phone. This is not the traditional victory stop episode like how I usually do. That's because I'm just all over the place. We're going to focus only on the main parts. So Hamlin wins. Again, I'm going to discuss the yellow line rule a bit later on. So Erik Jones, out of nowhere, second place. Ty Dillon in third. William Byron fourth. Ryan Newman in fifth. Chris Buescher sixth. Tyler Reddick 7th, John Nemechek 8th, Brendan Poole, career best, first top 10 for him in 9th, and Ryan Preece rounds out the top 10. Austin Dillon finishes 12th, a nice recovery for the number 3 team. They entered into this race below the cut line. They needed a solid day. They didn't get that. They had some issues throughout the race, but they were able to salvage a top 12 finish. And when you take a look at the other playoff drivers and what they went through, let's just say they had a pretty good day, to say the least. Quinn Houff, 13th. Alex Bowman in 14th. With that mangled up race car, they still managed a top 15 finish. Brad Keselowski, 18th. You saw them there. He spun on the final lap coming to the finish line. Kevin Harvick in 20th. Matt DiBenedetto, 21st. Chase Elliott, 22nd. Because they were penalized by NASCAR for moves involving the yellow line, they had to go back to the last 2 spots on the lead lap, so they finished 21st and 22nd. Martin Truex Jr., 23rd. Bubba Wallace in 24th. I think he led 19 laps in this race. Bubba had a really good day. Even though he was caught up in an accident late in the race, he tried to cut in front of Ryan Preece in turn 4, but obviously he was not clear. Spun into the outside wall in front of Ryan Blaney. He had a really good day. He was out in front a lot, made some really good moves, was able to hold his line out in front, so Even though they didn't get the finish they wanted, in my opinion, it was still a very solid day for the 43 team. Ryan Blaney in 25th, Joey Logano 26th. Those drivers, Logano, Kyle Busch, they were involved in that accident. I think after coming to the first overtime line finish, when the caution came out involving Tyler Reddick, Logano was all over the place. I mean, I've said this every single time Logano is in the race. If you want to know if a wreck's going to happen, just look at where the 22 is, because 95% of the time, if a race happens, the 22 either starts it or is part of the accordion process in starting a wreck. Very rare is he just caught up in it. He usually starts it. And he got black flagged twice for forcing 2 drivers below the line. He was out of control. He bumped, this is early on in the race on lap 52, he bumped Alex Bowman very aggressively. Bowman gets into Almirola. Almirola spins, causes the first huge accident in that race. It involves Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Austin Dillon. Those 2 drivers are also involved, as well as Ryan Blaney. Now, Kyle Busch, he finished 27th, but when you look at the day he had, it was unbelievable. Like I said, he was caught up in the accident on lap 52, nearly got a bit of airborne under his number 18 car. He had such a roller coaster day. He was up and then down, and it looked like he was in position to at least get a somewhat good finish when you take a look at how his day went, until he got spun by Tyler Reddick in the tri-oval. Jimmy Johnson 29th, Kurt Busch 32nd after that hellacious hit he took at the start-finish line. Thank goodness he is okay. That reminded me a lot of Dale Earnhardt's accident 96 involving Sterling Marlin at Talladega, about how the car, as soon as it hit the outside wall, it just flew into the air. But again, luckily, Kurt Busch is okay. And then Almirola 37th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 38th, and Christopher Bell 39th. I mean, this race was chaotic from the beginning. We had 3 cautions in the first 12 laps. The first one involved Christopher Bell cutting a tire. This is, I blame this part on no practice or qualifying. Teams didn't have a chance to get their car right for the race. Still kind of odd on how after 1 lap your car goes flat, but that was just, again, that's how you knew this race was going to be crazy. After the first lap, we already had a crash. The second accident involved Ricky Stenhouse Jr. getting tapped from the back end by John Nemechek in the tri-oval, spun to the inside wall. Then the third caution involved Corey LaJoie getting no oil pressure and just stopping right before turn 1. 3 cautions in 12 laps. You knew this race was going to be crazy. But okay, let's now talk about the yellow line rule. In my opinion, again, and Dale Jr. said this on the broadcast, the yellow line rule needs to go. Okay, we're spending so much time debating on whether Hamlin's move was legal or not. All right, and I'll be honest, I don't know if Hamlin's move was legal or not. I really don't know. It is like it could go either way. I really don't know. But if NASCAR can just get rid of this yellow line rule, we wouldn't have this issue. We wouldn't have this debate on whether Hamlin's move was legal or not. We wouldn't have this move on whether De Benedetto should have been penalized or not. That was a fantastic finish, that final lap. With them sliding all over the racetrack, going below the yellow line, coming back up, 3-wide photo finish. That was a fantastic finish, but unfortunately, it got ruined because De Benedetto got penalized, so he falls back to 21st. And now some people don't think Hamlin's win was legit, because when NASCAR announced Hamlin was the winner, the crowd booed Hamlin. I don't know if they booed Hamlin or the call, but they booed. So much so that they were even chanting later on Matty D, because they felt like Matty D should have won that race. But obviously, when you think about it, De Benedetto was also penalized, so it would have made a difference. But I think they should just get rid of this yellow line rule. Just get rid of it, all right? So that we don't have to deal with discussions or debates or arguments on whether a certain move was illegal or not. You know, especially coming to the finish. I mean, my God, that was an incredible finish, but unfortunately, it probably got ruined because of this rule. And I hope that NASCAR really takes a look at this and says, we got to get rid of this. Like, I understand the reason why they implemented this rule in the first place after 2001, after what happened to Dale Earnhardt at Daytona. But I think after 20 years and all the safety improvements and all that stuff, I think the yellow line rule itself is causing a danger for the drivers. Because before, without the yellow line rule, they had an extra bit of racetrack. Now, with that yellow line rule, if someone cuts down, they either have to hold their lane or go below the line with them. If they hold their lane, that driver gets turned. And we have seen moments in Talladega and Daytona's history where that yellow line rule has caused some big-time accidents. Look at 2009, Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski. Edwards, he came down. If there was no yellow line rule, Keselowski would have just gone below the yellow line and not touched Edwards. But Because of that rule, he had to hold his line, Edwards turns himself, gets up into the air, and into the catch fence. But yeah, this race was absolutely mental. As for a rating, I don't think you can give a rating. You know what? This is my rating. Absolute mental. That's my rating. Absolute mental. But I had so much fun with this race. This race was amazing. NASCAR, don't change the Super Speedway package, but get rid of the yellow line rule. And NBC, stop cutting away races to local news. No one cares about that, all right? That's all I got to say. Those are my only takeaways from this race. I'm very happy to see Bubba Wallace. He ran really, really well. Chevrolet was strong. I feel so bad for Matt DiBenedetto. I mean, once again, this close from winning a NASCAR Cup race. He was this close from winning last weekend at Vegas, this close from winning last fall at Bristol. And by the way, last fall at Bristol, he lost to Denny Hamlin. Today, he loses to Denny Hamlin. But, oh man, this sport is just, again, it's mental. I don't know what else to say, but wow, what are your guys' thoughts on this race? Tell me in the comment section down below. Again, I do apologize it wasn't your traditional victory stop, that we didn't go through the entire race, but you guys saw the stage racing and the results and all that stuff. So again, sorry for that it wasn't traditional, but let's be honest, this race was anything but normal. So I think you can give me a pass on that. But until next time, man, check out some MDK. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys next time.